Hi, my name is Eija. I'm a second-year master's student in the art education program here at Concordia. I'm going to be presenting kind of the more theoretical framework for my thesis research, which is concerned with how the moving body learns by navigating in urban spaces, especially the Montreal underground. So I have a little bit more of a narrative approach to my presentation. But I'll just begin. I moved to Verdun in July 2021. I love my apartment and the area, but what I love most is that almost every day, and often multiple times a day, I get to move through the Verdun metro station. What is most striking about this architecture, the architecture of this place, is the play between negative and positive spaces. The lines which define its contours are both decorative and integral to the support structures which keep the cavernous chamber from caving in. After spending a few minutes for many mornings and evenings watching fellow commuters interact with the station, I realized that the direction of the architectural lines and the dilation of the intervals between them instruct the pace and path of the body's movement through space. Every day I practice the choreography the architecture of the station demands of me. I have learned how to move my body through the negative spaces between its pillars, its railings, its gates, and its steps. I practice these motions almost every day, and now, after 30 months, this dance becomes automatic. In line with contemporary educational theorists Manning, Mitsumi, and Hunter, I believe that there is an inherent link between human cognition and the urban choreographies the body subconsciously learns through everyday navigation of urban spaces. The increasing placelessness of contemporary educational institutions perpetuates the perceptual division between the body and the environment, but also the body from the mind. This perceptual body-mind segmentation, which is a cognitive condition of modern extractivist social development, positions the environment as an inert surface for the transportation of bodies, goods, and capital, rather than an integral actor in the process of human epistemic formation. Of this, Grenwald writes, "When we fail to consider places as products of human decisions, we accept their existence as non-controversial or inevitable, like the falling of rain or the fact of the sunrise. Moreover, when we accept the existence of places as unproblematic, places such as the farm, the bank, the landfill, the strip mall, the gated community, and the new car lot, we also become complicit in the political processes, however problematic, that stewarded these places into being and that continue to legitimize them. Thus, places produce and teach particular ways of thinking about and being in the world. They tell us the way things are, even when they operate pedagogically beneath a conscious level." Then, oh, I see. Wait, am I? It's okay. Oh, it's the down. Okay. Perfect. Every day I practice the choreography the station has taught me. I've learned how to move my body through the negative spaces in its negative spaces. Cognitive scientists and philosophers Andy Clark and David Chalmers' article, The Extended Mind, was published in 1998. The Extended Mind thesis, or EMT, proposes that the mind does not exclusively reside in the brain or even the body, but extends into the physical world. Clark and Chalmers suggest that some everyday objects of the external environment are integral to human cognition and function as extensions of the mind itself. Though the author's discussion is mostly limited to handheld objects that can process and/or store information, such as mathematical calculations, a diary, or a filing cabinet, the EMT can be logically extended to account for what David Grenwald describes as the pedagogical character of place. Grenwald echoes early proponents of place-based pedagogy, such as Dewey and Whitehead, in his lament that the increasing placelessness of school environments continue to enforce the modernist disconnect between students' sense of self and sense of place. In cities, this perpetual bifurcation disempowers learners from being conscious of what sort of hidden curriculums are programmed into the built environment. This proposition is echoed in the work of architects turned artists Madeline Jins and Shashuko Arakara, who coined the term the architectural body in their co-authored eponymous book in 2002. They describe the body as a complex organism that is always in the process of reading its surroundings and must be defined together with that within which it moves. In the same vein of thought, architects and theorists Elizabeth Diller and Ricardo Scaffito proposed the body as a space as interdependent constructs, inseparable from the cultural forces that have shaped them. Concordia's own Aaron Manning refers to this mutual formation of the body environment as a becoming body. This is a body that is involved in a reciprocal reaching toward, through which it ingathers its surroundings as it forms itself, much like how concrete takes on the impression and form of the structure that contains it as it cures. The implication of these propositions, which render the boundaries of the skin obsolete and the body as an emergent formation interdependent with its environment, is that much of a person's identity and values can be determined by their environment. As urbanites, our spatial navigation skills develop through negotiating with the architectural structures that surround us. Performing these interactions with escalators, revolving doors, and staircases become almost subconscious actions. Functional fixation, a cognitive bias that limits a person to interact with an object only in the way that it is traditionally used, limits our capacity to critically analyze body architecture relationships or imagine them otherwise. When looking at the material characteristics of Verdun Station and how human bodies respond to them, it becomes clear that this is a transitory space good for walking through, but not meant for loitering or socializing or living. When I critically look at the vernacular of movements practiced by the users of this space, I see a certain set of gestures and pace of movement facilitated by the structure. If we continue with the extended mind thesis, which suggests that much of our learning occurs through our bodily interactions with the spaces that we inhabit, it is appropriate to ask what unconscious biases we are absorbing when certain forms of movement are facilitated by these megalithic structures. What types of bodies can perform these movements, and what larger economic and social systems or cycles are these movements a part of? What bodies fit into our public spaces? Using the language of critical educational studies, I wonder what hidden curriculum is embedded in our functional fixations with our built environments. The answer to these questions have the potential to reveal much about the origin of many local sociocultural attitudes towards disability, labor, and xenophobia. The unveiling of this hidden curriculum programmed into the built environment was also a concern of Guy Debord and the Situationist International, who write, "Nothing really new can be expected until the masses in action awaken to the conditions that are imposed on them in all domains of life and to the practical means of challenging them." And so my thesis has been a kind of experiment into research creation of creating a practical mean of challenging these norms. Sociologist and philosopher Henry Lefebvre believed that places are made through the mobile flows of capital, people, objects, energy, or matter, which course through and around them. Like how the character of river currents can change from vicious rapids to casual meandering, depending on the texture of the terrain beneath the water's reflective surface. The rocks that decorate the riverbed may be obscured by the water, but their presence is still visible in the waves and the eddies, which result from the moving liquid accommodating their presence. This is much like when I observed that in Verdun Station, the direction of the architectural lines and the dilation of the intervals between them instruct the pace and path of pedestrian foot traffic through it. But it is not exclusively material conditions of urban corridors which define human movement through them. Riverbeds which are cut by water following the natural topographical paths of least resistance are the perfect exemplum of the co-constitutive relationship between bodily movement and architectural spaces. Rhythm is the excessive production of this relationship, and habit is the result of our bodily absorption of it. Though we are mortally implicated in it, the geometry of this architecture-body relationship has become unknown to us, hidden beneath the surface conditions. In our rapid daily labor cycles, we have forgotten that the symptoms of body-spatial relationships such as congestion, displacement, and rush are not natural or unalterable environmental conditions. This slide shows a series of screenshots from this great video by kind of contemporary river explorer Ray Goodman, who is instructing us how to identify a blockage or a rock beneath the water, and how we can look at the surface conditions for indications of that. Lefebvre authors rhythm analysis as an embodied research method for analyzing the rhythms of urban spaces and the effects of those rhythms on those spaces' inhabitants. By emphasizing the dynamic and procedural qualities of spaces and the rhythms through which the spatial order is maintained, we are reminded of our agency in the architecture-body relationship. It is the task of the rhythm analyst to mediate qualitative bodily experiences and quantitative data to situate the everyday within larger rhythmic structures such as capitalism or economies of information exchange. I believe that if we can become more aware of the rhythms which surround us, we can trace the rhythms back to the barriers, either material or immaterial, which we have lost track of. Once we can recognize the barriers, physical or social, that live beneath the surface, we can challenge the givenness of our exclusionary realities. We can create space for imagining creative ways to navigate them which suit our heterogeneous needs and abilities and disrupt the inertia of capitalism which keeps us in exhausting forward motion. In line with Haraway's now nearly axiomatic proposal that knowledge is situated, Lefebvre posits that space is known through the body. If learning is not and has never been in the classroom, how can we facilitate our students to become aware and practically harness the teaching of rhythm structures that our cities have to offer? How can we teach them to move with rather than be moved by urban spaces? Proposed by architects and urban theorists Michel Lincourt and Harry Parnasse in 1970, the Metro Education Project is a symptom of a larger experimental street school movement which took place during the 1960s and early 1970s in metropolitan areas within Pennsylvania and New York to bring schools into the urban landscape. Deschoolers, as these educators called themselves, criticized the institutionalization of education as a means of preventing people from educating themselves. These itinerant schools, which were part performance project but mostly an earnest educational experiment, had no permanent classroom but instead functioned within the community spaces, using theaters and their off hours as lecture halls, the audience space of the courthouse to learn about law and social sciences. The grocery store is a place to understand human health and international agricultural trade. The list goes on. What is unique about these schools is that the environment is utilized as a medium for the study of standard school subjects rather than the subject of study to be learned in a sanitary space away from the messy influx of reality. In this paradigm, the teacher acts as a facilitator rather than a gatekeeper of knowledge, and the student learns through direct somatic exploration of their environment, and the cityscape is reprogrammed into a learning space rather than simply a surface for the transportation of bodies, goods, and capital. Arts-based pedagogy offers the perfect platform to revitalize the Metro Education movement and provide an access point into the critical practices of rhythm analysis. In response to the Metro Education legacy, I have been working on developing a curriculum for a mobile reading group workshop series based in the Montreal Underground, which integrates rhythm analysis into the curriculum and responds to the outcomes it delivers. Through play and performance, I hope to have my participants will learn to better understand the relationship between their bodies, minds, and built environment. I'll just skip a bit. In the face of the rapid mechanization of society, Dewey is early to identify the mimetic relationship between institutional invalidation of the everyday environment as a valid place of learning and the increasing alienation of the worker from accessing understanding of the significance of their labor within local social ecology. This pedagogical research creation project is an attempt to create a new theory of bodies learning in motion as they traverse the cityscape. This is a guerrilla art education for a body that ingathers. Yeah, these are some of my worksheets for but I can talk more about in the question period. But yeah, thank you.